I couldn't wrap my head around what I just heard. There I was, attending a huge Chamber of Commerce event, about to receive an award, and out of nowhere, my wife of a decade, Diane, leans over and whispers that she's leaving with Gary, my business partner, for a weekend getaway in Vegas, right after the ceremony. Have you lost your mind? I asked, keeping my voice low so no one around us could hear. Lust, Ron. Pure lust, she replied in a hushed tone. For him. Right now, I can feel him hard through his pants, and soon enough, it's going to be inside me. We need to talk, I told her, keeping my voice steady. But not here. When we're back home after all this. No, Ron, let me make something clear, she said firmly. If you want to talk, maybe you can suggest some things you've always wanted me to do with you but wouldn't let me. I'll be back Monday night, and we can chat then, assuming you still want to. This was the start of a long holiday weekend, and I knew full well she didn't need to be back at work until Tuesday. So you planned all this out with him? I asked, still in a low tone. Of course, she responded coolly. His wife knows too. I glanced over at Gary, my soon-to-be ex-partner and so-called friend, sitting right next to Diane with a smug look plastered on his face. I wanted to deck the guy right then and there, but this wasn't the place, not in front of all these so-called community leaders. My eyes shifted to his wife, Karen, who was seated beside him. She didn't look too thrilled herself, clearly, she was aware of the whole situation. My head was spinning, but I snapped back to reality when I heard my name being announced by the Master of Ceremonies. I stood up, shook his hand, and accepted the award, pausing for a moment as the photographer snapped a picture. I gave my planned speech, though I made a quick decision as I was speaking. I'd originally written a thank you for my wife in my notes, but I cut that part out. Instead, I simply expressed my gratitude to the community for their support and thanked the chamber for the honor, then wrapped up my speech. I wasn't sure if anyone would catch the omission, but Diane sure did when I returned to my seat. What? I didn't even earn a mention, she asked sarcastically as I took a sip of my now lukewarm drink. I just glared at her without saying a word. So that's how it's going to be, huh, she said. Well, like I mentioned, we'll talk when I'm back on Monday. Gary got up next to take the podium, intentionally brushing past me on his way. If you go through with this, don't bother coming home, I whispered to Diane while Gary started speaking. There won't be anything left here for you. To drive the point home, I slid my wedding ring off and handed it to her. She gave me a smirk and dropped it into her purse. You know why I'm doing this, right? She asked. Of course you do. It's because of what you did with Karen. Don't try to deny it, I have the pictures. So, you'll keep your mouth shut, let me do this, and we'll talk when I get back. Don't do this, Diane, I pleaded. Nothing happened between Karen and me except dinner. We can straighten things out after this ceremony. Too late, she said, her voice unwavering. It's already set in motion. The tickets are bought, the hotel is booked. This weekend, I'm giving Gary my body, no strings attached. He can do whatever he wants to me, and there's nothing you can do or say to stop it. What if I told you he's HIV positive? I said, grasping at straws. She laughed, not buying it. I wouldn't believe you for a second. You'd say anything to keep me from going. Don't say I didn't warn you, I told her firmly. If you go through with this, I guarantee you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Just enjoy the weekend without me, she said casually. Go play some golf or something. When I'm back, everything will go back to how it was. I couldn't believe the audacity of this woman. No, things won't be the same, Diane, I said, my voice firm. We'll see about that, she replied, almost smugly. A minute or so later, Gary returned and slid into his seat. Diane immediately turned toward him, and I saw her hand resting back in his lap. The sight made me sick, and I turned away, trying to hold back the anger building inside. Finally, the event wrapped up, and we stood to leave. "This is your last chance, Diane," I told her, one final attempt to reason with her. She and Gary exchanged amused looks before she smirked at me. "We're heading out now, Ron. Maybe I'll give you a call, maybe I won't. Either way, I'll see you on Monday." "No hard feelings, buddy," Gary added, that grin still on his face. "I'll try not to wear her out too much for you." "We're done, Gary," I said, keeping my tone level. "Not just as business partners, but as friends too. I don't ever want to see or hear from you again." "We'll see about that, partner," he shot back, as he led Diane away from me. I glanced over at Karen, who was sitting there with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Do you need a ride home?" I asked her gently. She shook her head. "No, I called for an Uber," she replied quietly. "But thanks for asking. Didn't you tell them that nothing happened between us?" I asked. "That it was just dinner and some conversation?" "I tried," she said, wiping her eyes. "But they wouldn't believe me. Gary's got pictures of us at the restaurant, and Diane's convinced it was the start of an affair. You know how she gets when she makes up her mind about something." "Oh, I know all too well," I said, shaking my head. Once Diane got an idea in her head, there was no changing it. False assumptions, always jumping to conclusions. That was her specialty. "I'm really sorry, Ron," Karen said, her voice soft. "You don't deserve this. I just hope Gary had enough sense to at least bring protection." "It doesn't matter," I replied, feeling the weight of it all. "Whether he uses a condom or not doesn't change the fact that she's giving herself to him. That's all that matters now. I'm done with both of them." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I'll do what needs to be done," I told her. "What about you?" "I told Gary if he went through with this, I'd file for divorce," she said firmly. "And that's exactly what I'm going to do. This isn't his first time cheating on me, but it sure as hell will be the last." "Good for you," I said, nodding. "If you need anything, let me know. I can recommend a good lawyer if you're interested." "Thanks, Ron," she said softly. "I really appreciate that." With that, she walked away, and I followed a moment later, heading to my car. On the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about the last 10 years with Diane. We'd gotten married 5 years after Gary and I went into business together. He was the one who introduced us, actually. It was about 4 years into our business partnership when I first met her. At that point, Gary and Karen had already been married for 3 years. Diane and I hit it off, started dating, and eventually tied the knot. Gary even stood as my best man at the wedding. Never in my wildest dreams would I have believed he'd betray me like this, and Diane, well, I never thought she'd be capable of it either. When we got married, the business was really starting to take off. My lawyer at the time, Jim, had advised me to have her sign a prenuptial agreement to protect my assets, including the house and the business. Diane wasn't thrilled about it, but she signed in the end. I'd made sure the agreement was fair, and I even had a clause about infidelity. There was a lot to handle now, and not much time to waste. It was still pretty early when I got home, so I decided to call Jim Simpson, my lawyer, on his cell. "Hey, Ron," he greeted me. "I thought you'd be out celebrating your award with Diane tonight. What's going on?" He listened as I filled him in on everything that had gone down earlier that evening. "Wow, Ron, I'm really sorry to hear that," he said when I finished. "Do you want me to start drafting the divorce papers?" "Yes, Jim," I said firmly. "I want to file for divorce based on adultery as outlined in the prenup, and I need you to also draw up papers to dissolve the partnership. When Gary and I set up the business, we had a clause in the agreement that allowed for the partnership to be dissolved if one or more of the partners were involved in any morally questionable behavior that could negatively impact the business. I figured this situation qualified." "Are you sure about going that route?" he asked. Absolutely, I replied. I want to restructure the business as a sole proprietorship if possible. We had talked about maybe turning it into an LLC before, perhaps now's the time to go ahead and do that. Okay, I'll start working on it, Jim said. But it's going to take a bit of time to sort everything out. I get that, I said. But I want the partnership dissolved as quickly as you can make it happen, and I need to minimize my financial losses as much as possible. Consider it done, Ron, he assured me. Thanks, I said, then ended the call. I knew that according to the partnership agreement, I'd have to pay Gary something to buy him out of the business, but the less I had to give him, the better. I had full confidence Jim would handle it right. A couple of hours later, my phone rang. It was Diane. I just wanted to let you know we've arrived at the hotel in Vegas, she said. I'm so ready for a weekend of non-stop action. Diane, before you do anything, you should know Gary's HIV positive, I warned her. If you go through with this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Come home now, and maybe, just maybe, we can work on fixing our marriage. Oh, Ron, she laughed. Still trying that, huh? Get over yourself. It's happening. I'm going to let Gary F*** me senseless all weekend long. Honestly, I'm getting wet just thinking about it. Maybe if you behave, I'll let you taste him when I get home. Diane, I'm warning you, I started, but she hung up before I could finish. That was it. I tried to warn her, but she refused to listen. The rest of my now ruined weekend was spent erasing Diane from my life. On Jim's advice, I headed to the bank first thing Saturday morning and handled all the necessary financial matters, including paying off her credit card before canceling it. Over the weekend, I received 3 voicemails and several text messages from her. She was clearly trying to get a rise out of me. Oh yeah, she moaned in one of the messages. Gary's cock is buried deep inside me right now, Ron. It's so much bigger than yours and feels incredible. And in case you're curious, I've swallowed him several times already. I know I never did that for you, but he's just too delicious. Maybe I'll even let him knock me up. Anyway, gotta go, he's about to start again. Bye. The other voicemails were pretty much the same. I forwarded every single one of them to Jim to use as proof of Diane's infidelity. I also sent them over to Karen to help with her divorce from Gary. Then I called a locksmith and had the locks on all the doors changed. I wasn't concerned about the house, as I bought it before we were married, and the mortgage was in my name only. I packed up all of Diane's clothes and personal belongings into garbage bags and stuffed them into her car, making sure she'd still have enough room to drive. I pulled the car out of the garage and parked it in the driveway. After that, I took down every photo that had her in it, including the large wedding portrait that had hung above the fireplace. I smashed that one into pieces and tossed them in the fireplace to burn. By the time I was finished, there was no trace of her ever having been in the house. After hearing her voicemails the next morning, I decided it was time to call Diane's mother. I told her we needed to have a conversation, and she invited me over for lunch. After finishing my sandwich, she asked what was going on, so I laid it all out for her, playing the voicemails Diane had left for me. By the time I was done, she was a mess, completely heartbroken. That foolish girl, she muttered. I can't believe she'd do something like this to you. I'm so sorry, Ron. Of course, she can stay here when she needs to, but I swear, I'm going to tan her hide for this. I'm sorry too, Mom, I replied. Ever since my own mom passed away from a stroke a few years back, I'd started calling Diane's mother Mom as well. She's going to need all the support you can offer her. Of course, she said, her voice heavy with sadness. But that doesn't mean I won't give her a piece of my mind. I chuckled and gave her a hug. As we pulled apart, she wiped her eyes and said, "Please stay in touch, Ron." I promised I would, and then I left. She was still dabbing at her tears when I walked out the door. After that, I stopped by a local tavern that served the juiciest burgers in town and treated myself to one, along with a couple of beers. On Monday, Jim called to let me know the paperwork was ready, so I headed to his office. Everything was in order, so I paid his retainer, signed the necessary documents, and left. The divorce papers and the business dissolution would be filed with the court the next day, Tuesday. "Where do you want her served?" Jim asked. "At her workplace, if possible," I said. "She embarrassed me in public, so it's only fitting she gets a taste of the same." "Got it," he said with a nod. Before the day was over, I received a couple more voicemails from Diane, with the last one letting me know she was on her way home. That made me laugh. Gerald dropped her off around 5:30 that evening and quickly sped off, too much of a coward to face me after everything. I sat there and waited, listening as she stepped onto the porch. I could hear her fumbling with her keys, but none of them worked. Eventually, she rang the doorbell. I ignored it for a bit, and then the pounding on the door started. "Let me in," she shouted. I got up, walked to the door, and opened it. She looked me up and down, then tried to step inside, but I blocked her path. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked, incredulous. "I live here too." "No, you don't," I said calmly. "Not anymore. You forfeited that right when you left Friday night. But I told you I'd be back, and we could talk things over if you were still interested," she said, looking confused. "And why is my car in the driveway? Why isn't it in the garage? What's all that stuff inside it?" "That's your stuff, Diane," I explained. "Like I said, you don't live here anymore." "Come on, Ron," she said, trying to soften her tone. "I get that you're upset. We can sit down and talk about it if you want." "I wanted to talk on Friday," I reminded her. "I asked you. Hell, I practically begged you to hear me out, but you wouldn't. Instead, you insisted on spending the weekend with Gary." "That's right," she said, her expression hardening. "After what you did with his wife, I thought I deserved some payback." "And what proof do you have that I ever slept with Karen?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Show me." She pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of Karen and me sitting at a table in a restaurant. "What's this?" she asked, clearly thinking it was her gotcha moment. "That's a picture of two people having dinner," I replied. "There's no evidence of any affair in that photo, because nothing happened. I've never cheated on you, not once, not since the day we became exclusive." "Then why were you having dinner with her?" Diane pressed. "You must have expected something afterward." "There you go again, jumping to conclusions without any proof," I said, shaking my head. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her frustration growing. "That's what I wanted to discuss with you on Friday, but you wouldn't listen," I told her. "Now, tell me, did Gary use a condom this weekend?" "Of course not," she said. "You know how much I hate condoms." "I see," I replied calmly. "And I'm guessing you let him finish inside you more than once." "That's right," she said, without a hint of shame. "I've still got some of him in me right now. My plan was to let you clean me out, and if you were sorry enough, maybe I'd let you sleep with me. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So you were planning to kill me, then?" I asked, my voice low. Her eyes went wide. "What? No. Where the hell did you get that idea from? Remember a few months ago when Gary mentioned he wasn't feeling too good?" I asked, watching her face closely. "It was just a couple of weeks after he came back from that trip out east." "Yeah, I remember," she said slowly. "I told him to go see his doctor and get checked out. He never told me what the doctor said, though." "Well, Judy found out," I said. "That's how she learned he tested positive for HIV. And you want to know why? Because he gave it to her. She tested positive not too long ago. That's what we were talking about over dinner that night. When he infected her, he didn't know he had it yet, but this weekend? This weekend, He knew damn well what he was doing while he was screwing you. I handed her a copy of Gary's test results, which Judy had given me the night we had dinner. Diane's face drained of color, and her eyes widened in shock. I told you on Friday, I said, but you refused to believe me. Oh my God, you were telling the truth. I think I'm going to be sick. She doubled over and threw up right there in the front yard. I stood back, watching as she heaved a few more times, completely disgusted. When she finally straightened up, she looked at me, terrified. Am I going to die? She whispered, tears in her eyes. I shrugged. I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't tell you. Judy's doctor told her that it's not the death sentence it used to be, but it's still a rough ride. I suggest you see Dr. Barnes first thing tomorrow and let him know. He can run some tests, and maybe, if they catch it early enough, they can do something. But as for our marriage, that's as good as dead. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Your mom said you could stay with her until you get back on your feet, I said. My mom? You told my mom? She asked, her voice full of disbelief. Yeah, she deserved to know what was going on, don't you think? I suppose, she muttered. And just so you know, you'll be served with divorce papers at work sometime this week, I told her. Please, Ron, no. I don't want a divorce. Can't we work through this somehow? She begged, her voice desperate. No, Diane, I said flatly. We could have, maybe, if you'd sat down and talked to me on Friday instead of running off to Vegas with Gary. But you made your choice, and now you have to live with it. You made your bed, and now you've got to lie in it. So what was going on between you and Judy at the restaurant? She asked, still clinging to her last shred of hope. I already told you, we were talking, I said. She had just gotten her test results and wanted to talk to me. She asked if I had any idea that Gary was HIV positive. I told her the truth, I didn't. I was trying to figure out how to help her and Gary navigate this, but it turns out Gary had someone follow her. He took those pictures of us at the restaurant, and when you saw them, you jumped to your usual conclusions. And now, here we are. I hope it was all worth it. Please, can't you give me one more chance? She pleaded. I'm dying here. I've been dying ever since you walked out on me Friday night, I said coldly. But I love you, she sobbed. Love me? Right now, I don't even like you, I said. Now, get off my lawn. I turned and walked back inside, slamming the door behind me and locking it. I glanced out the window and saw her kneeling on the lawn, sobbing uncontrollably. She looked utterly broken, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Eventually, she got up, still crying, and made her way to her car. I watched as she backed out of the driveway, tears still streaming down her face as she drove away. The next day, I arrived at the office bright and early, hoping to catch Gary when he came in. I had already informed security to confiscate his badge, and 2 officers were stationed outside his office, waiting for him. When he finally walked in, he flashed me that familiar smirk, though it quickly faded when he spotted the guards. What's going on here? He asked, his confusion clear. They're here to take your badge and ensure you don't leave with any company property, I replied calmly. Leave? I'm not going anywhere, he said, puffing up his chest. Wrong, I said. As of today, the partnership is over. You're no longer employed here. Bull. You can't just kick me out like this. Read the agreement we both signed, I said, tossing a copy of it onto his desk. I had highlighted the clause that allowed for the partnership's dissolution. The paperwork is being filed this morning. The company's temporarily being reorganized as a sole proprietorship. You've got 15 minutes to pack up your belongings and leave before these officers escort you off the premises. This is because I spent the weekend with your wife, isn't it? He sneered. Partly, I admitted. But it's also because you knowingly exposed her to HIV, which happens to be a crime in this state. His face dropped. What? That's not true. I've seen your test results, Gary. Judy showed them to me. That's what we were talking about in the restaurant that night. She told me you infected her. I was actually considering making you a silent partner so you could keep your medical benefits and still earn some income, but after what you did this weekend? That's beyond unforgivable. You knew you were positive, and you still slept with Diane without telling her. That's illegal. You and Diane may have had this whole weekend planned out, but she had no idea what you were carrying. That, in my eyes, violates the terms of our partnership. I was going to offer you a severance package, but after this? Forget it. Now get out. You can't do this, he shouted, his face red with anger. I'll fight you on this. I swear to God, I'll spread rumors about you, say you've been sleeping with half the female staff, and that you're threatening their jobs if they don't go along with it. Really? I asked, keeping my voice steady. You'd lie to ruin my reputation, on top of knowingly infecting my wife with HIV, hoping she'd pass it on to me? Damn right. By the time I'm through, you won't have a company left. I smiled and pulled out an audio recorder from my pocket, pressing play. Our entire conversation echoed back in the room. I think that'll add a few million to the lawsuit, don't you? Not to mention, it'll help secure a conviction. Plus, you made your little threat in front of 2 witnesses, didn't you? I said, nodding toward the security guards. They both smiled and gave a nod of confirmation. I glanced at my watch. You know, I used to think you were my best friend, Gary. I also thought you were pretty smart. Turns out I was wrong on both counts. You've got 10 minutes to pack up and get the hell out of here. I turned to the guards. Watch him. Make sure he doesn't touch his computer and that he only takes what belongs to him. Yes, Mr. Thompson, one of the guards replied. Gary packed up his things under the watchful eyes of the security team. Before leaving, he stopped by my office one last time. I'm sorry, Ron, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Just leave, I replied, not even looking up. After he was gone, I called a company-wide meeting. It was a bit of a squeeze getting everyone into the main office, but I felt they needed to be informed. I explained that Gary was no longer with the company and that the partnership had been dissolved. I reassured them that while there might be some short-term disruption, their jobs were secure in the long run. One employee asked why Gary had left, but all I said was that it was a personal matter and left it at that. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Diane was served with the divorce papers at her job on Thursday, which naturally set off a wave of gossip. Her mother told me she had gone to see Dr. Barnes on Tuesday, but it would take some time before she got the results. Thankfully, Diane didn't flood me with calls or texts. It seemed like she finally understood the gravity of her mistake and how it would impact the rest of her life. Realizing there was no chance of us reconciling, she signed the papers. Jim let me know the divorce would be finalized in 90 days. Judy also filed for divorce from Gary on the grounds of adultery. She told me he was holed up in a cheap motel, rented by the week, until he could figure something out. But that wasn't the only trouble Gary found himself in. After Diane's visit to Dr. Barnes, the doctor reported him to the authorities. In our state, anyone with HIV is required to inform their partners before engaging in any intimate activity. Since Diane testified that Gary never told her, he was looking at up to 20 years in prison. I'd heard that this law wasn't always enforced, as some prosecutors worried about the backlash, but in this case, the local authorities decided to go after Gary based on Diane's statement. A week or so after being kicked out of his house, the police showed up at the motel and arrested him. Given the potential public health risk, they placed him in solitary confinement. Gary's trial turned into a circus. The prosecution painted him as a heartless, manipulative man who intentionally set out to infect me, his business partner, by first infecting Diane. Both Diane and I testified, as did Judy. The prosecutor even played the audio recording I'd made in my office, which only worsened Gary's position. It didn't take long for the jury to convict him. Disgusted by what he'd heard, the judge handed down the maximum sentence, 20 years in state prison. But Gary's troubles didn't stop there. On top of the criminal conviction, he was now facing a divorce and civil litigation. Once Judy's divorce was finalized, she sold their house and moved out of the area. A few days before my own divorce was finalized, Diane reached out and asked if I'd meet her for dinner. After giving it some thought, I agreed. It felt like the right time to get some closure. We met at a quiet little restaurant and shared one last meal. "I hope you're not too embarrassed or ashamed to be seen with me," she said, offering a weak smile. "As long as we're not swapping bodily fluids, we should be fine," I replied, half joking. "I got my test results," she said after a moment. "I'm positive." I wasn't surprised, but it still hit hard. "I'm really sorry to hear that," I told her. "It's not your fault. You tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. This is a mistake I'll be paying for the rest of my life." "So, what's the doctor doing for you?" I asked. "He's got me on antiretroviral therapy," she said. "There's no cure, but he says as long as I take my meds every day, I can live a relatively normal life." I had to tell my boss, though. Thankfully, he's letting me work from home, and Mom said I can stay with her for as long as I need. "That's good to hear," I said, genuinely relieved. "My lawyer's also filing a lawsuit against Gary," she continued. "With his conviction, they say it's pretty much a guaranteed win. The hard part will be collecting, given that he's in prison." "I see," I said. "Well, I know that his 401k is still pretty sizable, even after Judy took her share in the divorce. Plus, she sold their house, so you might be able to claim his portion of that as well." "Have you talked to Judy recently?" I asked. "Yeah, we keep in touch now and then. She's moved away, but we still talk. I'll mention what you said and see what she thinks." After a pause, I asked, "What happened to you, Diane? I don't get it. I wanted a life with you, kids, the whole thing." She sighed quietly. "I don't know, Ron. When Gary showed me those pictures of you and Judy, I just lost it. I was convinced you were sleeping with her. I guess I really went off the deep end, huh?" "Just a little," I said. "But why didn't you just talk to me?" "I was angry," she admitted. "I didn't want to hear anything you had to say. Even when Judy tried to warn me, I thought she was just covering for you and would say anything to stop me. I told you about Gary on Friday. Twice, I reminded her. I was hoping you'd pick up on what I was trying to tell you. Honestly, I didn't want to hear a word from you," she said. "And now, I'm stuck paying the price for the rest of my life. Can you ever forgive me for being so stupid?" "I don't know," I replied. "Right now, it's all I can do to just be civil with you." "Well, I appreciate that much at least," she said. "I know this hasn't been easy for you. So, how are you holding up?" "I manage," I said. "I've been keeping busy with the business. With Gary out of the picture, my workload's doubled, so there's plenty to do." "Any women in your life?" she asked, almost shyly. "No, I'm not really looking for anything right now. Probably won't be for a long time. Once bitten, twice shy, you know." She nodded. "I'm really sorry. I've learned a lot from all this too," I said. "Like what?" she asked, curious. "Never trust anyone," I said bluntly. Her eyes widened. "I thought I knew Gary for years before I even met you. Turns out, I didn't know him at all. The things I've learned about him through this divorce make me sick. And then what you did, well, that didn't help either." "I know. I'm sorry," she said softly. "Yeah, well, it's done," I replied. My eyes drifted down to her hand. "I see you're still wearing your rings. We're technically still married, she said. At least for a few more days. If you want them back, you can have them, but I was hoping you'd let me keep them. I don't want them, I said, shaking my head. I'd just sell them anyway. Why do you want to keep them? As a reminder, she said, her voice breaking a little. Of what I once had and threw away. They're yours, I said. Do whatever you want with them. Thank you, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. I stood up, ready to leave. I better get going. Still got a lot to do tonight. Tell your mom I said hello, and good luck with everything. I will, she said. And, thanks, Ron. I really am sorry. Yeah, me too, Diane. Goodbye. I could hear her soft sobs as I walked away. I wasn't as angry as I had been when this whole mess started, but it still weighed heavy on me. Ending a decade-long relationship with someone you thought was your forever isn't easy. Life carried on, though. Work became my focus, and within a year, things settled into a steady routine. I had plenty of chances to date, but I didn't. I wasn't ready, not after what Diane and Gary put me through. Trust wasn't something I could give easily anymore. So, life became a cycle of work, eat, sleep, and repeat. I didn't have a social life to speak of. About a year and a half after my divorce, my secretary, Denise, introduced me to her younger sister, Angela, at a company event. Angela was a couple of years younger than me and had just gone through a divorce herself. Her husband had left her for another woman. We started dating, taking it slow, one step at a time. Both of us had been burned by our ex-spouses and were still nursing some trust issues, but as time passed, we began to trust each other more. After a few weeks of dating, things progressed, and we eventually spent the night together in my bed. A few months later, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. We're planning a spring wedding, followed by a 5-day cruise in the Caribbean. We even invited Diane's mother to the wedding, though we're not sure if she'll actually come. I'm still carrying some pain from what Diane and Gary did, but Angela has been incredible in helping me heal. I've done my best to support her in her own healing journey too. Now, I can honestly say I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my life with her. Whenever I think about Angela, I can't help but recall that old saying, sometimes, the bad things that happen to us lead us right to the best things we'll ever experience. And that brings us to the end of today's story. Did it go the way you thought, or did it throw in a twist you didn't see coming? I'd love to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a conversation. If this story kept you engaged, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new here or haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join the community. I post fresh, captivating stories regularly, so make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out.